All right, let's get straight into it, Kel. It's Wednesday. Wonderful wordsmith joins me now from Sydney. Next week, I think we might do some election-specific words. I was talking to a producer in the break and said a lot of people don't understand things like core flutes. You do if you're in politics, but perhaps not out in the real world. We'll get into those, but let's start with some for this week. Guilt trip. We've heard that word thrown around a lot, a guilt trip in relation to The Voice, of course. Prince Harry trying to guilt trip King Charles. Where does it come from, Kel?
Well, the Oxford defines it as serious self-reproach imposed on you by someone else. Now, this is interesting, at least it interests us wordies. It appears to have come from one of America's most distinctive homegrown industries, the writing self-help book industry. Because as far as I've been able to track it down, I haven't got back any further, I found a self-help author in America, a bloke named George K. Simpson, who coined it, I think, in 1972 in one of his self-help books, where he said, guilt tripping is a form of intimidation that's imposed on people. And that's really interesting. I mean, it means that if anyone is trying to guilt trip you, they are bullying you. So resist it. So good on the American self-help industry. They've given us a useful expression.
About the only thing they've given us that's useful. But anyway, Elizabeth from St Ives in Sydney says, a recent headline read that, Tony Burke would double down on his IR policy. She wants to know where double down comes from.
From card games such as Pontoon and Blackjack. And apparently it started in those games in the late 1940s, and it's to do with the idea of you double your bet after you've seen your initial hand of cards. Now, don't ask me any questions beyond that, Peter, because I don't know these games and I don't know the rules. But apparently, if you double your bet after you've seen your first hand of cards, that is called doubling down. And the card game went from that to mean taking a risk in a dangerous environment. So there you are. That's what Tony Burke is doing, apparently.
I should have asked my mum. My mum's the card shark of the family. I certainly am not, but and my aunt as well. They love a bit of cards. Hey, this one's from Geelong. We love Geelong. William in Geelong wants to know, what's the origin of faff, as in faffing around?
The good news is it is not a polite way of saying a rude four-letter word, which is good for a family show, isn't it? The Oxford says origin unknown. Yes, origin unknown. There are three possibilities. It may come from a very old word, to faffle, which meant to stutter and stammer. It may be a play on the first letter in the word fuss, because it's about fussing and dithering, and there are lots of F's in faff. Or it might come from a very old Yorkshire dialect word meaning a slight breath of air. And that would be onomatopoeic, a faff, a slight breath of air. I lean towards the third one. I think it comes from there.
Hey, look, we've got another one from Geelong. This is from Joseph. I went to school at Sacred Heart in Geelong. Hello to all the Sacred Heart girls out there. Joseph wants to know why politicians talk claptrap. Why do we call it claptrap?
It comes from the idea of trying to deliberately draw applause, trying to trap the claps. On the London stage in the 1700s, 1730s, it was common for actors to create a bit of business on stage, a bit of nonsense, just to generate a round of applause, just to trap some claps. And ever since then, nonsense has been called claptrap. Isn't that interesting? I mean, you wouldn't think that from the theatre, but that's where it comes from.
You are incredible. I mean, I'm sure people at home can hear me going, we don't rehearse this. We do not rehearse this. I learn as much as you do every night at this time. Thank you, Kel.